What if one single moment forced a man who had lost everything to care again? That question hung in the frozen air on the day Luke Mercer heard a sound that would change his life. A wolf's low growl cut through the cold winter silence of northern Arizona. Luke stopped his horse with a light pull of the reins. The land around him was wide, white and bitter cold under a gray December sky. He listened. At first, only the wind answered. Then came a different sound. A child crying. Luke moved fast. He slid off his horse and pulled his rifle from the saddle. 3 long winters alone had trained him to act without delay. Out here, if a man hesitated, the cold or something hungry would finish him. "Easy, Buck," he whispered to his horse. "I won't be long." His boots crushed the frozen ground as he followed the sound through thin pine trees and low brush. The wind cut against his face and carried the smell of snow coming soon. He found the clearing within moments. 2 young Apache girls were pressed against a large rock. They were no older than 6 or 7. Their clothes were thin, showing how long they had been in the cold. A starving gray wolf circled them, desperate and close to attacking. The older girl stood in front of the younger, one small arm spread to protect her. Luke lifted his rifle in one smooth motion. The wolf turned toward him, teeth bared. The rifle fired once. The wolf fell silent in the snow. The girls did not move. Their dark, tired eyes watched Luke with fear and confusion. He slowly lowered his gun, crouched down, and spoke in a soft voice that surprised even him. "You're safe now. Wolf can't hurt you anymore." He unscrewed his canteen and offered water. The older girl studied him, thinking hard, then let her sister drink first. Luke noticed how cold they were. Without another thought, he took off his coat and handed it to them. "Storm's coming. My cabin's close. You'll freeze if we stay out here." The older girl wrapped the coat around herself and her little sister. When Luke turned to lead them back to the horse, a small hand grabbed his sleeve. The touch hit him harder than he expected. It had been a long time since anyone held onto him for safety. He lifted both girls onto Buck's saddle and walked the horse through falling snow. The sky darkened fast. There was no chance of finding their people tonight. He would first keep them alive. When the cabin came into view, it looked small and plain, built of rough logs with a thin line of smoke coming from the chimney. It stood strong, but to Luke it had never felt like a home. It was simply a place to hide from the world. Inside, it was a single room with a stone fireplace, a small table, 2 chairs, and 1 narrow bed. The only personal thing in the room was a framed photograph above the fireplace. Luke sat the girls by the fire and added wood until the flames grew warm. "Get warm, I'll fix food." They sat close to each other, whispering in Apache. Luke cooked beans and sliced bread. When the little one pointed at the photograph, Luke's chest tightened. "That was my wife," he said quietly. "Sarah. She's gone now." The word "gone" seemed too small for the pain behind it. Luke had buried Sarah and their stillborn son 3 years ago, then walked away from the life he knew in Colorado. Since then, he had lived alone, speaking more to the wind than to people. The girls ate carefully. The older one tested every bite before giving it to her sister. Luke watched them, noticing how tired the smaller girl was. Soon her eyes closed, and she rested against her sister. The older girl fought sleep, her head dropping and rising as she forced herself to stay alert until she finally gave in. Luke laid his bedroll for them near the fire and went to his own bed across the room. The silence felt different that night. For the first time in years, it did not feel like an empty weight crushing him. It felt warmer. At dawn, hoofbeats woke him. Luke reached for his rifle in one smooth motion. Outside, the cold air stung his lungs. A lone rider approached through the snow, a woman on a paint pony wrapped in a faded red blanket. She carried herself with steady strength. Behind Luke, the cabin door opened. The older girl rushed outside. "Inali!" she cried, voice shaking with emotion. Both girls ran to the woman, who dropped to her knees and wrapped them into her arms. No words were needed to understand who she was. Their mother. She rose to her feet, keeping an arm around each daughter, and looked at Luke. Her English was careful but clear. "You helped them. I am Nea." Luke nodded. "Wolf had them cornered. I just did what was right." Naya shook her head. "In our way, when a life is saved, a debt must be repaid." "There's no debt," Luke said. "Anyone would have done the same." "You are alone," Nea said softly. "It was not a question. I offer service in your home for saving my daughters." Luke frowned. "Ma'am, that's not how I see things. You don't owe me." "You misunderstand," Nea said. "I have nowhere to go. My people sent me away for mixed blood. Settlers see only Apache. A woman alone dies in this land. This is not payment, this is survival. If we stay, we work. If we leave, we likely die." Luke looked at the empty land, and then at the shivering girls. The storm would bring more danger. The long journey to Colorado could wait. "You can stay here for the winter," he said. "Till spring, then decide." Nea nodded once. "Until spring." Luke didn't know then that letting them stay would change everything he thought he knew about life, loss, and family. The winter settled around the cabin, but inside, life began to change in ways Luke had not expected. Naya worked quietly, wasting no movement or words. She cleaned, mended, cooked, and brought order to things Luke had ignored for 3 years. She found ways to stretch their supplies, using dried plants and winter herbs he never knew existed. The cabin no longer felt like a cold shelter. It started to feel lived in. The girls adjusted quickly. Winona, the younger one, followed Luke everywhere he went. She held nails or tools for him while he fixed the fence or repaired the lean-to. She hardly spoke, but her small smile began to appear more often. Tala stayed watchful. She kept her distance, studying Luke as if still deciding who he was and if he could be trusted. But she listened to everything and learned fast. One evening, Tala pointed at wooden pieces on a small shelf. "What is this called?" "Chess," Luke said. "It's a game." "Want to learn?" "Yes," she answered, without hesitation. And so Luke taught her. Night after night, she learned the moves and strategies, her eyes sharp and focused. She lost the first few games, but soon she began to surprise him. She laughed once as she took his knight, and the sound filled the cabin like sunlight. For the first time in years, Luke began to look forward to evenings. But peace never stayed long on the frontier. Late January, 2 men from the settlement 20 miles east rode into the clearing. Frank Miller and Jim Dawson. Luke had traded with them a few times. They were rough men who liked to know everyone's business. Their eyes landed on Nea at once. "Heard you had company, Mercer," Miller said as he climbed down from his horse. "Didn't figure you for taking up with Indians." Luke kept his voice calm. "Their business is their own, Frank." "What brings you here?" Dawson spat tobacco in the snow. "Army's got trouble with Apache up north. People are nervous. Talk as some might be hiding out." "Nobody's hiding here," Luke said. "They're just waiting for winter to pass." Miller's smile was thin. "Colonel Bradley's building a militia. Planning to clean out strays come spring. Might be best if you don't get too comfortable with your arrangement." Luke's jaw tightened. "They're staying till spring. That's all." The men exchanged looks, mounted their horses, and rode off, but their warning hung in the cold air. Trouble was coming. That night, Nea stirred a pot over the fire, her face calm but her hands tense. "They fear what they do not understand," she said softly. "It has always been this way." Later, after the girls slept, she told Luke more about her past. She had been raised partly at a mission school, taught English, reading, sewing, and scripture. She married an Apache man, but neither his family nor hers approved. When her husband died fighting soldiers, she was left alone, unwanted in both worlds. "I have walked between 2 worlds my whole life," Nea said. "Too white for my mother's people, too Apache for my father's. I belong in neither." Luke listened, the fire casting warm light across her face. "Those men won't decide what happens here." They already have, Nia said. Their minds are closed. Luke poured coffee into 2 tin cups. What do you see for spring? Nia looked at him for a long moment. Snow melts, rivers rise, roads open. I must choose a path. I wondered for months if I would see spring. Now I will. That is enough. What do you see? She asked. Luke stared into the fire. For 3 years, he had seen nothing but empty days. Now life was stirring again, like the first green shoot under winter snow. He did not speak it, but he knew change was coming. Before dawn one morning, a wolf's howl cut the silence. Close, Luke grabbed his rifle and moved to the window. Nia already had her bow ready. She woke Tala and handed her a small quiver. "Stand ready," she told her daughter. Outside, 5 hungry wolves circled the corral. Buck stomped nervously. Luke shot the first wolf mid-leap. Nia's arrow caught another before it could reach the chicken coop. The remaining wolves paced back and forth, waiting for a weakness. Then Luke saw something beyond the trees. 4 riders. Armed. Miller again. As the wolves scattered, the riders entered the clearing. Miller raised a hand as if in greeting, but his smile was cold. "Heard shooting," he said. "Came to help, but looks like your squaw has it handled." Nia stood in the doorway, bow raised. Luke stepped out onto the porch. "My property, my business," Luke said. "We don't need help." "Way folks tell it," one of the men said. "You're turning against your own kind." Luke kept his rifle pointed downward, but he was ready. "This woman and her daughters are under my protection. Any man who threatens them answers to me." The men looked at each other. The bearded one spat. "You're making a mistake. Spring's coming. Things are gonna change." Miller pointed his chin toward the tree line where the wolves watched. Not all predators are easy to see. They rode off, but everyone knew this wasn't over. When the silence returned, Nia placed a hand on Luke's arm. "They will come back." Luke nodded. "Then we'll be ready." From that day on, Luke no longer thought of you and me. Without speaking it, his mind shifted to something new. Us. The winter slowly loosened its grip. Snow melted. The creek began to run again. Green touched the land. Spring had arrived. And with it came the question they had been avoiding. Would they stay together or walk separate paths? Wait, before we move on, what do you think about the story so far? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm really curious to know. Spring painted the land with new life. Wildflowers pushed through soft earth. Birds returned to the trees, and the cabin no longer looked like a place built for surviving winter. It looked like a home. A real one. Luke sat on the porch steps, fixing a leather bridle while watching Winona chase a butterfly across the fresh green grass. He could hear Tala and Nia inside, speaking in a mix of English and Apache. Their voices blended with the warm breeze, sounding like something that belonged there. Everything they had built during winter had changed the cabin. Tala had carved small designs into the porch posts. Winona had lined the windows with stones and pine cones she collected. Nia had hung herbs from the rafters to dry. The place no longer echoed with silence. It carried life. Nia joined him on the steps. She sat with the calmness she always carried, her dark braid resting on her shoulder. They watched the girls for a while without speaking. "The path will be clear soon," Nia said softly. The journey north to Colorado would be possible now. Luke's hands paused on the leather strap. He had known this moment would come, yet he was not ready for it. "That's still what you want?" he asked. Nia took time to answer. "Want is a luxury. I have not allowed myself. For years, survival was enough. But now..." She looked around the small clearing, at the cabin, at her daughters. "Now I wonder what grows after winter ends." Her eyes met his. "What do you see when you look ahead, Luke Mercer?" Quote, For months, Luke had asked himself the same question. At first, he saw nothing, only loneliness. But the answer had changed slowly, like ice melting on the creek. 3 years, I've been walking through life without feeling any of it, Luke said. Then you and the girls came, and this place... His voice grew softer. It was shelter. Now it feels like something more, something I didn't think I'd have again. Nia did not speak. She listened the way only she could. "If men like Miller return," she said, "they may try to drive us away." "They will," Luke said, steady and sure, "and we'll face it. Together." Nia repeated a word she had spoken months earlier, but this time her voice held no question. "We." The next afternoon, under the old cottonwood tree, where small green leaves had just opened, Luke and Nia stood facing each other. Tala and Winona stood beside them, their hands linked. No preacher, no paper, no rings, just two people choosing each other. "You saved my daughters from wolves," Nia said. "But you saved me from a life without hope. That is a debt that can only be repaid with a lifetime." Luke shook his head gently. "There's no debt now, only a choice. And I choose this. I choose us." They joined hands. Their promise was simple but stronger than iron. From that day on, travelers passing through the territory spoke of the family at the crossroads cabin. They spoke of the quiet white man with watchful eyes and steady hands. They spoke of his Apache wife, whose knowledge of plants could heal or protect. They spoke of their daughters who moved between two cultures with rare grace, strong in both. Some said the militia once planned to drive them out, but the attempt never happened. Some believed it was because Luke Mercer was not a man to be crossed. Others whispered that the family had more friends than anyone realized. Hunters, traders, and travelers who had found warmth at their table. People from both worlds who stood ready to defend them. Whatever the truth was, one thing remained certain. Inside that small log cabin, a home had formed. Not because of blood, or the same skin, or the same past, but because four hearts had chosen each other when walking away would have been easier. In a land where winter could steal even the strongest spirit, Luke, Nia, Tala, and Winona discovered the one thing that survived every storm. Family was not something you were born into. Family was something you built, piece by piece, day by day, by staying when every path to leave lay open. They stayed, and that made all the difference.